Bonjour tout le monde, welcome back to We in France. I'm Diane, and here we talk about everyday French life in France and beyond from the perspective of an American who's lived here since 2012. Okay, so today's topic is banking in France, and French banking is very different from what I was used to in the US. And truth be told, I didn't even open a French bank account for my first couple of years in France. When you move to a new country though, you have to adapt. That's just how it is. You have to adapt to the culture and the way of life and do your best to do like the natives do. So yes, I eventually did open a French bank account, and I'm gonna dive right into French banking system differences and just the norms of what to be aware of, what things are different about banking in France, so that way you know what to expect and you'll be more prepared when you come to France. And thank you so much to Wise for sponsoring this video. Okay, so even though I didn't open a French bank account right away, I admit it really is necessary for life in France, especially if you plan on living here long term and making a life in France. Most bills, they're directly debited from your account, and having a French debit card makes day-to-day life that much simpler. So let's get right into number one. It takes a little while to open an account. And like many things in France, you have to make an appointment, and that's the case with a French bank account. You cannot just walk into a random bank one afternoon and get it done on the spot. Also, the meeting will take over an hour, maybe even an hour and a half, and it's never the same day. So that appointment, in my case, was scheduled for the following week, and it also requires a lot of copies of paperwork. And your debit card will be mailed to you in a few days. You will definitely not get it on the spot. Also, if you're American, it's not simple to open an account just to reporting regulations, so most likely you will need to provide a W-9 form. Okay, next, debit cards and accounts are not free. Now, in the US, it's quite common to open a regular checking account for free. Unless you drop below a certain threshold or overdraw your account, there aren't always monthly maintenance fees. Actually, in many cases, there aren't any fees, and your debit card is free as well. But in France, that's not so. Of course, it varies between French banks, but generally a basic checking account will run you between 5 and 10 euros a month to maintain, just to have it. So you may have to pay more for overdraft protection, for online banking, and also the little plastic debit card has a flat fee. Mine personally is 49 euros per year. No, it's not fancy. No, I don't get any amazing services with it. It's just how banking is done in France. So yeah, you pay for banking, and nearly 95% of French people over the age of 15 have a debit card, and many bank accounts and cards cost a bit more than that if you want a gold or a platinum card. I think it's a little over the top because the service is kind of behind the times. And it was really kind of surprising to me to see that banking costs so much in France, especially because I feel the service is a little subpar. And just as an example, Crédit Agricole is my bank. Their mobile app does not let you do mobile deposits like my US bank does, where you would take a picture of a check, a paper check, and deposit it all via your phone without actually having to go to a bank. And when I use my French debit card at a grocery store, I literally get a text alert 3 days later. So if my card had been stolen, it might take a few days to realize it with that delayed alert. Now in France, there are online banks, and sure, they can be great, I feel, as a secondary account. But what I found is that for bills and certain loans in France, if you're going to buy a home, they require you to have a regular retail bank. So depending on your banking needs, an online bank might not be the best option. Banking costs money in France. Okay, next, most banks do not have cash available aside from the ATM. So most people go to the ATM for cash withdrawals, and if you need a larger sum of cash from the bank, it has to be ordered in advance. So just forget about walking in one Saturday morning and getting a few thousand euros out of your account without prior notice. Tellers generally do not have a drawer full of bills or even handle cash at all in some branches, and they have signs to say as much. And I think that's great from a safety perspective, but from a convenience perspective, if you want your cash in a hurry, it just won't happen that quickly because you need to order it. Okay, next, wiring money is commonplace. Now, back home in the US, bank wire transfers were not really common ways to send money. I knew they existed, I knew what they were, but like Venmo, Zelle, those are popular today. Now, if someone asks you to do a bank transfer or wire transfer in the US, you'd probably kind of throw up a few red flags in your head and say, wait a minute, are you a scammer? Are you trying to rip me off? Like wire money? It's just not really sent that way in casual dealings. It's just not common in the US. But in France and many other places in Europe, wire transfers, even today, it's a common way to send money, and you can just do it online in a breeze. So for example, when you book an apartment vacation rental, it's perfectly normal for the owner to send their bank details and have you wire the deposit directly. Whereas maybe in the US, it would be more common for a company just to put a hold on your credit card. So it's just a different way of doing things. But if you're going about something in France and you're asked for a wire transfer, don't necessarily think it's a scam. Do your due diligence, of course, but it's not something that's out of the question here. And speaking of sending money, one way I do that is with Wise, formerly known as TransferWise. I've used them both in my professional and my personal life. And if you're not familiar with them, Wise, it's an international account. It's not a bank for over 50 currencies where you have bank details to get paid in 30 different countries. You can also set up a multi-currency direct debit. You can access multi-currency debit card capabilities and more. Wise, on average, is 7 times cheaper than old school banks where you send, spend, or withdraw money around the world. So you're not going to get hit with crazy fees. I've personally used them for about 5 years now via their easy to use app. And whether you live abroad like me, or you travel a lot, or you live life in different currencies, have clients around the world, you need to get paid or need to pay someone else in a different currency, Wise is a no-brainer, and there are no crazy hidden fees. Everything is shown to you up front, and it's really like having accounts all over the world with none of the hassle. So the most convenient aspect for me is when it comes to travel. You can spend internationally with the Wise debit card. Here's what mine looks like. In the local currency when you shop online or travel. And lastly, be sure to check out the link below to find out more about Wise and get your first transfer free. Okay, on to my next point. All right, next up, business hours. Now, like many things in France, the business hours are a little more limited, and French banks, they're no exception. So they operate generally, there's a little bit of leeway, generally between 8:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. And many banks, especially in small towns here where I live, they close during lunch. And they're actually closed all day on Mondays as well. So if you work past 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., you don't have time during lunch to stand in line at the bank, especially if your bank's closed. It can be really frustrating to find a time when your bank's open. And as I said, not all services are available on the mobile app. So yes, they are open till noon on Saturday, so that's certainly a plus. But honestly, anything beyond general banking, like a deposit or an account issue, you do need to make an appointment in advance, like opening, closing an account, adding new services, getting a new card, applying for a loan, and that sort of thing. Okay, next. Small branches don't have safe deposit boxes. Now, safe deposits in general, I would say they aren't super mainstream in France like they are in the US. For me personally, it was common for friends and family in the US to have a safe deposit box in a local bank where for a monthly fee, they'd store important documents in a private manner, valuables, cash, and jewelry, that sort of thing. In France, safe deposit boxes are not quite as common. So I'm not saying you'll never find a safe deposit box anywhere in France, or that French banks don't have a safe or a vault. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about safe deposit boxes where there are 2 keys, one for the bank, one for you, where normal everyday people, even in smaller towns, can put their valuables away in a safe area. None of my banks in my area of France offer them, and I've never actually seen safe deposit boxes in smaller towns, in small banks in France. Okay, next, no drive-through services. Now, in the US, whether you use it or not, you're probably aware that many banks have drive-through windows where you can pull up in your car to cash a check, make a deposit, take care of other banking tasks from the driver's seat of your car. Maybe they were more popular when I was a kid, but they still exist today, and they could save you a trip inside. Also, drive-through hours are more accommodating than the bank's lobby hours, so they can be convenient and super convenient if you have young kids in the car, and it's just easier to keep them in their car seats instead of going in, especially if they're sleeping. So they can be super convenient. But banks in France do not have drive-through windows, so if you're looking for them, you're not going to find them here. Next, small denominations of bills are the norm. So when it comes to cash, you can go years without ever seeing or actually handling anything higher than a 50 euro banknote. I'm a perfect example of this. I think 10 years ago, and it was a one-time thing, I saw a 200 euro bill just once when I was a in a Paris bakery seeing a tourist try to pay for like 3 euros of his goods in Paris with this 200 euro bill. It was not accepted by the bakery. Many merchants prefer smaller bills just because it's easier to make change and kind of weed out counterfeit bills. But just for your knowledge, ATMs generally go up to denominations of 50 euros, and it would be very rare to see a 100 in everyday life. As I said, I've really only seen it once. It was a 200 euro bill, and I've never touched anything larger than a 50. They're just not as common as, say, a $100 bill would be in the US. Where in the US, it's not super common to see a 100, but they exist and people use them regularly at stores. In France, 50 is pretty much the highest of what you would see in everyday life, but don't let that trick you into thinking cash isn't used. Cash is used quite often in France, just no giant bills, even though I believe euro bill, the currency goes up to 500. Never seen one. All right, next, no credit history or credit score in France. Now, in the US, one's credit score and history determine a lot. Things like your ability to get a loan, a credit card, your credit limit, and that sort of thing. And the better your credit score, the better the interest rate, the better the terms on the loan. But in France, there is no central credit reporting agency, and a credit score and history don't exist in the same way. So here in France, if you apply for a loan or financing, the credit check in France consists of you just showing the bank proof of employment, 3 months of bank statements, 3 months of pay slips, and generally that's what they base your loan eligibility on. So if you have stable employment, the bank will calculate what you can borrow. They'll see what current outstanding debts you have, and then they go from there. All right, next, checks are widely used. Yes, checks are really quite common in France. Checkbooks are still issued by banks in 2021, and it's perfectly normal to see someone paying by check at the grocery store, and everyone in line just kind of looks and they patiently wait while the person fills out their check like it's 1990. You can pay the doctor by check, tradesmen, pay bills by check. Of course, people use cash and debit cards too, but checks are alive and well. Keep in mind you'll need to show your photo ID usually when paying by check at the grocery store. And yeah, they'll buy you some time since they take a few days to clear, but just to make sure your check doesn't bounce, if you don't have enough money in your account to cover the amount of the check, don't even write it in the first place, because French bank fees, as we talked about, they tend to be high. So if you bounce a check, you're going to be paying for it on the back end. All right, so let me know below in the comments if any of these surprised you, and if you can relate, if you live in France or you've done any banking here. And if you haven't subscribed and you enjoy this type of comment, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button right there. Do it. And you turned on the notifications so you never miss a video. And also, if you're new here, let me point out I have a line of Francophile merch that I designed as well. So we go into the holiday season. Maybe that's of interest. I have a free newsletter, also linked down below. And then for a few bucks, I have a France travel tips guide with special pricing. So all that good stuff's down below. And for those of you who have been here a while and you watch all my videos, I just want to say thank you again for being here, for supporting me, and for your kind words after I shared in early October that my mom passed away. So thank you. I really appreciate that more than words can express. So thank you. And thank you to Wise for sponsoring this video. And as always, I'll see you back here on We in France soon. Salut!
Thank you.